Benvenuti a tutti, and welcome to another edition of Italian America Long Island. My name is Dave Anthony Settadicati. Today we're taping in beautiful Boynton Beach, Florida. Not long ago I was contacted by a woman who had seen our mandolin show. She was reminded of her dear father who had played the mandolin his entire life. She sent me some recordings and pictures, and I found his story so touching. We're devoting this entire episode of Italian America Long Island to him and his story. Throughout the show, you're going to be hearing his recordings. So please sit back and enjoy as we learn about the life and miraculous music of Maurizio Salbego, Italian American.
The year was 1905. In the little village of Salcedo, Veneto, the Salbego family welcomed their seventh child, Giuseppe Maurizio. His parents were poor dairy farmers who grew figs and made wine. They would eventually have 10 children, with their eldest dying in an avalanche while serving with the Alpine Corps in World War I. Twin toddlers died of the whooping cough. Eventually, all the remaining family, except their youngest child, left Italy to escape the crushing poverty. Maurizio's choice was to leave for Australia, even though his older brothers and father immigrated to Chicago. In 1927, at age 22, he left from Naples to set sail 43 days to Perth. Paesani in Australia helped him to assimilate, but his struggles to find fortune never really paid off while he was there, working cutting firewood, cutting sugar cane, harvesting tobacco and corn near the towns of Cairns and Mariba. Eventually, he learned the terrazzo trade. Terrazzo is a very durable cement-based flooring, often used in commercial and public buildings. At age 33 in 1938, he gave up on Australia and set out to reunite with his brothers in Chicago, who had arranged a job for him working in the sewers. His willingness to work at hard labor, even in the most difficult conditions, paid off when he was invited to join Labor Union No. 2 as a linesman tending the streetlights of Chicago. 1938 was also an important year for Maurizio, because it was there, in Chicago, he met Mary, the woman who would become his wife. She had been born in Illinois, but at 18 months old, her family returned to Italy. She came back to America in her late 20s, and she met Maurizio through family events in the Italian-American community in Morton Grove. In 1940, they married. They lived a typical Italian-American lifestyle for the time. They went to family parties and shared laughter and food with their paesani from Cogolo, Caltrano, Asiero, and Asiago, all from the Provincia di Vicenza, Regione Veneto. They had 2 daughters, Carmen and Lena, and there were communions and other family celebrations. In the summers, they attended church carnivals with rides and Italian food stalls. On Sunday mornings, Maurizio would drive his Buick all the way to Kensington on the south side of Chicago to buy authentic Italian foods such as soppressa and Asiago cheese from the Thomas Dal Santo Italian market. It was a bad neighborhood, so he would only go on Sunday mornings because he said the crooks were still asleep. And he always played his beloved mandolino. His daughter Lena told me he learned music as a boy in Italy from the priest in charge of the local choir. In the Alpine Corps of the Italian Army, he learned and played cornet. In the 1920s, he picked up the mandolin, one that was made in Naples, for the mandolin was one of the most popular instruments of the day. He taught himself, listening to 78 RPM records. He played with fellow musicians at Italian social clubs or family events, enjoying the mandolin as a leisure activity, not a profession. He was very particular about his mandolin and cared for it lovingly. Whenever he found time to play, He was in seventh heaven. He enjoyed using his intelligence to master the more difficult pieces, all by ear. A highlight of his musical life happened when he played the mandolin at his daughter's wedding in 1971. This special moment will always be remembered by the entire family. However, life was not always pleasant, and in 1973 he developed crippling arthritis. At its worst, he couldn't even open his garage door. It must have been difficult for such a strong man who had done physical labor for so much of his life. It was even difficult to play his beloved mandolin. Nevertheless, Maurizio was a very spiritual man and never lost hope or faith, praying often and intensely to the Blessed Mother for a healing. Then, one night between midnight and 1 a.m., he received all at once the words and melody to a beautiful song. He believed it to be a gift from the Blessed Mother of Jesus. He started to get better every day, and by the 6th month, he was returned to vibrant good health. The doctor was incredulous. Maurizio picked up the mandolin and played once again, and he resumed all his usual routines, like riding his tricycle bike and drinking his daily coffee with grappa. His beloved song was ultimately performed by the choir of St. John Brebeuf Church in Illinois on Mother's Day 1981. Maurizio wished that everyone who listened to the song would receive a blessing from God. Let's listen now to this miraculous music performed by the St. John Brebeuf Church Choir.
Because my father has difficulty explaining himself in English, I will read the following. This is a true story. It happened to my father in 1973 when he was extremely ill with crippling and painful arthritis throughout his body. One night between 12 midnight and 1 a.m., he received all at once the melody and the words of the song that you just heard, which he will never forget, and it's a song that he loves very much. He wishes that God bless everyone who listens and likes this song, which he feels is a gift to him from the Blessed Mother of Jesus. A few months after this experience, he started to get better every day, and by the 6th month, he became normal. My father's name is Maurizio Salbego. He was born in northern Italy, a community called Salcedo, Provincia Vicenza in Italy, in 1905.
This is Dave Anthony Setadicati. Maurizio's story touched me, for I believe there is a definite connection between this physical world and the unseen world of spirit. We are always bonded to this world, though many of us are unaware that this bond and the world of spirit even exist. I also personally believe Our strongest and most immediate connection to the world of spirit is through the love our ancestors have had for us and the love and veneration we have for them. I strongly believe our ancestors are truly our guardian angels, and they may also carry our prayers to even higher spiritual powers. Maurizio experienced the blessed healing through prayer, and he even heard some divine music, which he in turn gave to the world as a gift. Now let's listen to more of the worldly mandolin musical performances of Maurizio Salbego. Many Americans know that Italians immigrated to the United States in large numbers during the period 1890 to 1930. But few are aware that many Italians chose other countries as their adopted homes. Canada, Argentina, and even Australia were destinations for many Italians looking for a better life. In fact, Italian Australians currently comprise the sixth largest ethnic group in Australia, and as of 2011, over 300,000 Australians still spoke Italian in their homes. In the 1970s, linguists identified Italo-Australian as a legitimate dialect of their nation. Australia has a long history of Italian immigration, and the first two Italians arrived on board the first colonial ship, the Endeavour, in 1770. Italians immigrated through the 1850s. They were mostly peasants who had enough money to pay for the long passage to this distant land. Along with them came many educated persons and highly skilled artisans, such as stonemasons and terrazzo workers. The Victorian gold rush in Australia of the 1850s attracted thousands of Italians who were seeking their fortunes. Unlike the United States, which during the period 1890 to 1930 saw millions of southern Italians and Sicilians coming, Italians immigrating to Australia mostly came from Veneto, Piemonte, Lombardia, and Toscano. A small number came from Sicily and Calabria. As American immigration laws became stricter and stricter in the 1920s, allowing entry to the country on a quota system, many Italians once again chose Australia as their adopted nation. Another factor that increased Italian immigration in the early 1920s was the rise of fascism in Italy. Today, many Australians of Italian descent have achieved success and fame all over the world and in every segment of society. Many Americans watched a PBS special on their home TVs featuring Alfio Bonanno, Australian-Italian singer. Alfio also performed in America for the National Italian-American Foundation. Anthony LaPaglia is another Australian of Italian descent who has made his name known throughout the United States, and he currently resides in the U.S. He has appeared in many movies, on television, and even on Broadway in the show Lend Me a Tenor. In sports, Australian-Italian Cameron Giraldo is a professional rugby coach and former player who is the head coach of the Italian national team and an assistant coach of the Australian National Rugby League. Today, the Australian government is populated with many Australian Italians in both elected and civil service positions. No matter where Italians immigrate, over the years they always add something valuable to the nations they adopt as their home. Italians have been in the Chicago area since 1680, when the Neapolitan soldier Enrico Tonti accompanied French explorer La Salle as second in command. Since then, Italians of all sorts, from saints to criminals, from the ordinary to the famous, have been living and prospering in the region. In the 1850s came the Genoese merchants, and plasterers came from Lucca. There were enough Italians that by 1868 the first Columbus Day was celebrated in the city. By 1930, there were over 70,000 Italian-born immigrants, predominantly peasants from Basilicata, Campania, and Sicily. As the decades passed, ethnic Italians have gone on to become aldermen, suburban mayors, county judges, and legislators in the state government, despite the strong prejudices against Italians from the Chicago press and the earlier arriving Irish population. There have been many famous Italian Americans from Chicago. The well-known sportscaster Harry Carey, actor Dennis Farina, and actor Joe Mantegna hail from Chicago. Enrico Fermi, the great nuclear physicist, called Chicago his home. To the shame of the hardworking and honest Italian Americans everywhere, mobster Al Capone is probably the most famous Italian American from Chicago. Capone was born in 1899 to a family of Italian immigrants in New York City. As a teenager, he joined local criminal gangs, working himself up to become a bodyguard for crime boss Johnny Torrio. In 1919, Torrio took him to Chicago to work as an enforcer for the crime family of Big Jim Colosimo. Through extreme violence and terror, he eventually became the boss of the Chicago outfit, dealing mainly in illegal liquor, gambling, and prostitution. He is widely assumed to have been responsible for ordering the bloody St. Valentine's Day Massacre in an attempt to murder Bugs Moran, head of the North Side Gang. Capone reveled in attention, such as the cheers from spectators when he appeared at baseball games. To his credit, he made donations to various charities and started a soup kitchen. He often told the press, "I am just a businessman, giving people what they want. All I do is satisfy public demand." With such outrageous fame and notoriety, the federal government ultimately convicted him of tax evasion, and he spent 7 years in prison. He was paroled for poor health and lived his last years in a state of reduced mental capacity in Palm Island, Florida. On the other side of the coin, Francesca Saverio Cabrini, better known as Mother Cabrini, was the first Italian-American citizen to be canonized as saint by the Roman Catholic Church. Though she founded over 67 charitable and educational institutions all over the world, she is most closely associated with Chicago, where she died. In 1877, Italian-born Cabrini asked the Pope permission to establish missions in China. Instead, he sent her to the United States to help the Italian immigrants who were coming in droves. Not to the east, but to the west, was the Pope's advice. She came to Chicago and organized religious classes for Italian immigrants and provided for the needs of many orphans. 2 miracles have been attributed to her intercession. The first involved a 1-day-old baby who was blinded by being given a mistakenly high dose of silver nitrate solution to its eyes. The other miracle involved the healing of a terminally ill patient of her congregation. Today, there are numerous shrines to Mother Cabrini, who has been named patron saint of immigrants. But the real story of Italians in Chicago belongs to the thousands of hard-working immigrants who left their homeland to find a better life in America. Though they left so much behind, they brought with them the culture, the music, and the values of their forefathers, and these have become a treasured, beautiful part of the fabric of American life. And for millions of Italian immigrants living in Chicago, the American dream has come true.
Ave Maria, che sempre pia, l'angelo Gabriele, Ave Maria, che sempre pia, l'angelo Gabriele portò la novità. L'angelo Gabriele, alleluia.